Tony D and Little Joan with the Screenwriter's Rant on Reagan, starring Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, the president who was president during the 80s. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 14, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. This is the president I grew up with. I didn't like Reagan when he was in office. I kind of liked him in the beginning a little bit, but during his time in office, I wasn't a huge fan. Looking back on it, I realized maybe first term Reagan was pretty good, but second term Reagan not so great. But I didn't really know much about politics. I was a teenager at that time, and but the first election I voted in, I may have voted for Reagan. I don't remember who I voted for. That was right on the bubble. I don't remember back then. After that, I was a Democrat for many years, but I may have voted for Reagan. I don't remember. It was too long ago. Second term, I don't think I voted for him because I think I was a fan of Dukakis at the time. Was that Dukakis who ran against him the second time? I don't remember. But yeah, it's a biopic about Reagan. I mean, Dennis Quaid doesn't really look like him. He's doing an okay voice, I guess. Not totally spot on. I've heard people do better versions of it. Everybody used to do Reagan back in the day. Well, there you go again. And that was, the voice. He was all right, I guess. I mean, he did a couple of good things that I knew at the time that I could acknowledge. Back then, politics wasn't so divisive, and Reagan did have issues. They did use lawfare against Reagan after he was president, but some of that was pretty shady, and he probably deserved it. I don't know. There's a lot of deep statery going on. But that was still a time when the Soviets were around. So a lot of Republicans, I think, look at that as, I was okay because of the Soviets. We had to beat the Soviets. Still a lot of militarism and still a lot of stuff that, shenanigans that I didn't like. But back in the 80s, when communism was kind of cool, being on the left was still kind of cool. Punk was cool, and that was sort of more left. It was anti-Reagan, I'd say that. That was sort of the time period. So I think because it's Dennis Quaid, it's probably going to be a glowing representation of him. But it's just, to me, it's just stuff that happened that I remember, I mean, I remember the assassination attempt. I remember the talks about him being an actor and how he came up in Hollywood. The stuff that was left out was the cool stuff, the libertarian stuff very early on. His friendship with Ron Paul. But the only thing people remember is tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev. And it worked. I give him that. But we were winning a Cold War, so he just gave the Russians a little push. So it worked out, and then the people who took over screwed it all up. So will this be any good? First act, Reagan's an actor, and will he be president one day? Some stuff that happened to him as a kid, we'll see some of that. And then second act probably be about his Hollywood career, how he eventually decided to become president, meets Nancy, marries her, and then a lot of the second act will be his presidency and his trials and tribulations. Third act will be, the end. The climax will probably be his second term. He's losing his mind. He's trying to get through things. Maybe this is the peak right here. Tear down the wall, and then I forget the order of things. I know the Marine base. I think the Marine base incident happened before this, and he pulled the troops out of Lebanon. I wonder if they'll portray that. So then it'll probably be seeing the wall come down, uh, you know, after that, and the Soviet Union breaking apart, and there'll be like, victory for America as Dutch is fading away and, going nuts, probably with a blanket over his lap, that kind of thing. I don't see that in the trailer, so maybe they're going to skip that part. Because again, I think this is going to be a glowing representation of Reagan, a romanticized version of it. That's not to say it's going to be bad, but for me, it's kind of boring because it's just like, oh yeah, Reagan. Sure, I remember him. Now, for some of you out there, you might say, oh, I want to get a history lesson. You got to understand, Hollywood cannot be trusted on this matter, either side. I because Dennis Quaid is in this, I'm going to say it's going to be glowing for the most part. So it's going to be a movie probably backed by people who are big fans of Reagan and wanted to, cement his legacy in the minds of people in the future. And this is a way to do it by creating a movie. So I wouldn't expect it to be particularly accurate. They'll exaggerate some things they won't even mention or play down. The same thing with every biopic. Will it be entertaining? Not for me, because I lived through this. It's just going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that. Hey, that's not the way it happened. Oh, that's totally the way it happened. So, I don't know if I could recommend it. I mean, I guess if you like biopics, I used to love them until I realized how terrible Hollywood was with them and how many liberties they would take with them. And now I look back and go, yeah, I don't really want to see that. Maybe for like, ancient people that we can never, we have to guess at anyway how they really were. I kind of like that. I mean, in my own work, I do that with some of the Pineys. I sort of fill in the gaps. I really enjoyed it in a comic book, if you've ever read it, From Hell, about Jack the Ripper. I think that provided some extra context or potential context. But if you keep it like that, maybe. So maybe for some of you out there, there'll be some context here that you hadn't thought about previously that you'll go, oh, I never thought about it that way. But I wouldn't take it as rote that this happened the way it happened, but you could consider some of it, and maybe check in with the oldies to see if it was legit. All right, let's read up what it says. A drama based on the life of Ronald Reagan from his childhood to his time in the Oval Office. All right, and that's it for me, Tony D. And Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more base takes. If you can find a more base take, I say, take it. Excuse me. I will be at Shoreline Vintage tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the Richland Vintage and Toy Fest. Now this, I got in last minute. Thank you guys for letting me in. It's going to be an early day. And then Sunday, I will be at the Flemington Book Fair in Flemington, New Jersey. So it's going to be a big weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend, so get yourself to the beach. But don't forget your copy of the Pineys. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.